Hey guys, welcome. We're going live today. I've got my buddies, good friends here with me. So we have Monica Cade and Jamie Gonzalez. We'll just see where the conversation takes us. But ideally, we want to talk about the infinite way, and what it means to live infinitely. What does that look like? I mean, what does it look like? Do you have an infinite bank account? Do you have a infinite life? Like what's the infinite way? So we kind of want to just throw things around. I will say straight up front, nothing is planned. Like we have not spoken about utterly, like we spoke about, let's just talk about the infinite way and talk more about, what that looks like. Exactly what I just said.
And that wasn't even planned.
And that
sat down here, saw a sign on my wall about happiness. It's not a destination, it's a way of life. I think you just saw the bottom bit, it's a way of life. I went, should we call this the infinite way?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a bit of an insight to the way we live.
Yeah, I mean, because the infinite way, for me personally, is a way that is unplanned. I know people like to have plans and they like to have direction and their goals, and I don't disregard any of that. But how's your plans and your goals going right now in the pandemic? There's sometimes things that will come into your reality that will just knock everything over, and suddenly your plans and what was important for you all immediately changes. And okay, it's not every day we have a pandemic, but what about experiencing like a near-death experience, or you have a health challenge? Suddenly everything that was important to you, it's just, the floor disappears, and what is real for you and what is important for you, it becomes clear.
So where have you experienced that?
In my life?
Yeah, like I suppose we need to talk about what that's the living of, so I suppose I've known you quite personally for the past decade.
Quite personally.
Yeah, quite personally. You're one of my closest friends. So I know a lot of stories and things that you've experienced, but I suppose when you talk about that, like maybe Monty, you think about it too, like, in your experience, and I'll have a think about it, but what's an experience where the flaws disappeared?
Oh.
And how have you responded to that, opposed to maybe when you were living, what it looked like when you're living according to the plan, opposed to then realizing that there's I don't know, you go there.
Come a bit closer, Jamie. Just come a bit closer. I mean, we no, it's just you're out of the AZ shot. Look, like everyone, I think we've all had moments where, the floor has disappeared. But, in relation to living to the infinite way, I can probably find a different reference point. But when you asked me the question just then, what came to me was when my sister died. For those who know my sister, Gazale Lowe, who does the Bondi Guru, give you a plug, Gaz. She has a twin sister, and she passed away. And losing someone that's dear to you, and knowing how much that will impact the entire family, the floor. Like I never forget the moment where I went to the hospital because my family told me to come to the hospital. It was like 6 a.m. I was out anyway because I was young and out partying. And I arrived at the hospital, and I never forget my sister running up to me and going, "Gaz is dead."
Wow.
And I was just like, and the floor just time still. It was a really surreal moment because I'll never forget, it was a foggy morning, and the moment she grabbed me and said, "Gaz is dead," like it started raining. It was an amazing, well, I won't say amazing, but it was a moment where the floor just disappeared. And when the floor disappears, like immediately, none of my goals, none of my ambitions, the future, nothing. The only thing that mattered right there was my sister that is alive. Yeah. My younger brother, Ali, comes up to me in that moment, and, he goes, so does that mean she's dead? Yeah. Does that mean we're never going to... He was very young. Yeah. He was very young. Does that mean we're never going to see her again? Like he couldn't... he was old enough. Yeah. He wasn't like 5. He would have been like, 12 or something. And just to you know, hold him and, you know, my father and my uncle and everyone else, that, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, in that moment when the flaw disappears, what is real for you and what is important for you becomes clear. Now, it's not they weren't important for me. It's not they weren't real for me, but it's I get congested with all my things that I want to achieve and all the things that how I'm comparing my life with other people and I need to accomplish this and, you know, and protect myself and manipulate and, you know, all the things that we do, it just falls away.
I know he almost said it was an amazing and it was something amazing, but I kind of get the reason why he may have said it in that context for a moment is because I'm hearing that you got so pulled into the moment by something that happened, right? And I know that's like an experience, someone dying is different, but I've heard a story of yours when you went skydiving.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I just thought of that in the same moment you told me about that, but you used to reference that as you used to not want to go skydiving. I remember the story. Some people do. I love it. I'm like, get me out of the plane.
I don't think I know this story.
Oh, okay.
You don't know the
no
story?
way. I think he's talking
I don't think so.
But
Let me tell you, mate.
no, but I'm just talking about that moment where you're drawn in. It sounds like that's what happened there, and you realize what's important, what's real, because you're not distracted by everything else. And it just, I don't know, it's reminding me of the skydiving experience. And you, after, you know, it's like, well, that was a spiritual experience, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think any experience whether the floor disappears, you know, my experience of skydiving was,
There was no floor.
Exactly, quite literally. You jump out of the plane and there is no floor.
But you
right?
didn't want to go. You were scared.
Well, no, I had no interest in fact, my friends came to my house at like 6 a.m. and they said, pack a bag. It was my birthday.
Yeah.
And they grabbed me from my Macquarie Street apartment right next to the Opera House. I'll never forget. They came in. A good friend of mine, Kerwin Ray, he was a big skydiving, like he was adrenaline guy. And he came to my house. He put a blindfold, and we just drove. And this was before I was flying, but I'll never forget. We drove for a couple of hours. I'm like, can I take the blindfold off? They're like, nah. After about, I don't know, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours, we get somewhere and it's just quiet. And I hear we're in two different cars. The cars stop and they'd say, stay in here, Zoghi. And so I'm hanging in there waiting, going, but I could just hear quiet. And in the quiet, I hear this, I hear a propeller. And I'm like, oh, we're catching a plane. We're flying somewhere. And so I finally they open the blindfold and I jump out. I'm like, where are we going? And we're jumping out of a plane. And I was just like, guys, not my thing. I'm not a jumping out of a plane kind of guy. Look, and I never forget my mate Michael Lane. You might remember Mikey. He comes to me and he goes to me, Zoghi, don't worry about peer pressure. We don't have to do this. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean we? Because I don't want to do it either. We don't have to do this, Zoghi.
It's Kerwin's idea.
It's Kerwin. Let them go. Let them go and do it. And of course, I just, you know, I never forget what Kerwin said to me. He goes, Zoghi, it's a spiritual experience. And I was like, how can I give up a spiritual experience? So I decided to do it. But I realized why it was a spiritual experience. And once I decided I was going, I looked at Mikey and he was like, oh, all right, we're going. But the reason it's a spiritual experience is once you jump out of that plane, and once the floor of the aircraft disappears, the very thing that's keeping you in the air disappears, and you're free falling, there is nothing outside of that moment.
And how do you feel?
Well, free.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, how does anyone feel when they're completely in the moment? You know, you feel completely free. You feel like, you know, you think to yourself you're falling. At first, as you fall out of the plane, you're like, oh my God, I'm falling. But then you're like, oh my God, I'm flying.
Yeah.
The falling turns into flying. And for those who haven't skydived, I mean, it's just it's a metaphor of life. That's what happens.
Even the fear in leading up to it. You know what I mean? Like the fear, the idea of, you know, what must have been in your mind to keep you away from doing such an experience, but then to dive into it. So, I don't know, to me...
I mean, nowadays I fly aircraft and do aerobatics. So people were hearing this and going, but you're an aerobatic pilot. No, back then I wasn't, and I never intended to be an aerobatic pilot. You guys got to understand, when I was a kid and my older brother would take us to the Luna Park or to the fun park, I never forget, I would be the kid holding all the bags and holding everyone's food and lunch bags, while my brothers and sisters went on the pirate ship or went on the roller coaster. I wouldn't go on it. I'm not an adrenaline guy whatsoever. Yeah. So I'll be just waiting for them, So
I get that. So I love that you, in this context, because we're talking about...
Have you jumped out of a plane?
No.
You haven't? We got it.
Money.
Why don't we do that, Mon? And we can do it as part of this, as an episode. We can do it live.
No.
Mon, it's a spiritual experience.
Yeah,
no. But it's interesting because we're talking about living infinitely, and being able to, you're talking about giving up our plan, or not about giving up our plans, but what happens when things don't go to plan.
You give up the control of your plan.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the part that has to force it, the part that has to manipulate it. I mean, we all know what happens when you give up the plan, give up the forcing or giving up the control of the plan. Yeah. What happens is you fall into the flow. And in that moment when you're in the flow, people always say, it felt like it wasn't even me doing it. So
I get that, and we can have these experiences, but why do you think, like, at the moment there's been so much change in the world, but some people are probably saying, yeah, I've given up, but I don't feel like I'm in the flow. Like, there's all this shit happening. Like,
yeah, but there's a difference between giving up versus giving up control, right? So some people give up, right? But they're not giving up control. They're giving up, like giving up, like, like.
I guess that's
what's the difference? Yeah.
Well, where you talk about how giving up means like you're just doing nothing. Like you know how you say you've still got to show up.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about that. I feel like that's the point of difference there.
Have you ever done that? Like, your own experience where you feel like you've given up, but then there's a difference between giving up and showing up?
Oh, plenty of times on this journey. Where in the beginning, I think, I can't even remember the words that you use now, but when you feel not to do anything.
Yes. Yeah.
I felt not to do anything, and I just wondered why, like, nothing was happening. And it took me so long to really, I guess, understand and embody what that meant, and then to know that I still have to show up, and there's still steps to be taken within the not doing anything.
I think, I relate to that too, because I remember years ago when I was working with Amir, there was this point I got to, I was like, you know what? I don't want to ring people anymore. I don't want to have to pick up the phone and talk to people.
Clients.
Yeah, to clients. I was like, because I was in contact with a lot of them. I said, it's just going to happen. I don't want to feel like I'm controlling it, Yeah. And it was just woo-woo shit that I was doing. But I went through that process and nothing happened. And then I considered, well, it was the agenda I was putting on the doing that made me feel like I wanted to give up. Because then I realized why I was doing it and stayed more connected with that, which is just the love I had to connect with people and share something. It changed. And that's where the showing up bit like dropped in. I'm like, yeah, when you're really showing up, it's different.
But that's the thing, like sometimes giving up, right? You're giving up on something that's not real for you, right? And then suddenly it becomes apparent, it becomes clear to you what is real for you, right? And that's when we talk about following the feeling. So when you're following the feeling, which is the infinite way, right? Because the feeling is infinite. When you're following the feeling, that's what's real. And in that moment, when you, the moment you realize what's real, there's a part of you that comes in that wants to control how that comes in, how that happens, right? So when I say there's a difference between giving up, control,
and then just giving up.
Giving up and giving up control.
That's right. Yeah. So you're not giving up on what you want. You're not giving up on what feels true. You're not giving up on what is real. You're giving up on how it's going to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the difference. Now, if you don't know what it is that is true for you, what's real for you, it's because you've been doing so many things that aren't. So then sometimes it really is about giving up, and you're giving up all. I'm done with this. I'm done with dating these guys. I'm done with dating these girls. I'm done with that happens all the time. Like people get into that, have lots of clients where like, I'm just done with these kind of guys. Cool.
I think there's recognizing that, but then there's also like, and I would make changes, but then I feel like in following the feeling, you still bring what you used to do back then in control. Sometimes would sneak in. Do you understand? Like, I would, like, for instance, like that. I'm doing something I love in my life now, connecting with people. I was sharing it back then, but then I would still bring in why I would control things previously to that, because it was about the agenda, it was about the outcome, it was about making money, it was about, do you understand? So I would have to catch myself there. There was a learning of, well, what's really following the feeling and what's the control stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying there, and I can definitely relate to that. Like,
okay, so then for like, if I was new to this work and I'm listening to this, I would be asking, okay, well, I can hear both sides, but how do I do that?
How do you do what?
Well, how do I find that fine line between
showing up and not having control, letting go of control?
I mean, it comes down to experience, it comes down experiencing what it feels like to be controlling. Because when you're being controlling, it's not always that you're being controlling. Sometimes
that's true.
Do you know what I mean? So like, there's times where you're being controlling and you just know you get, but the issue becomes when you don't know you're actually being controlling. Like everyone else can see you being controlling, but you can't see you being controlling because you're so entrapped into the precious, like in Lord of the Rings, right? You see the ring and that's it.
Precious, give it to me.
Wow, Jamie. But that one, right? So the issue becomes about when you don't know that you're being controlling, right? It's better to know that you're being controlling because then you can address that, you can resolve that, you can make decisions around that. But when you don't know you're being controlling, that's when it's scary. But to answer your question, it comes down to experience. It comes down to being controlling, because what is the outcome of being controlling? Right?
You attain something.
No. What ends up happening to anyone who's being controlling?
Things become out of control.
Things can fall out of control, and it's draining.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the people who are being controlling, they usually go home at night and they will have a lot of drinks and they'll sit there and cry and just go, "I'm just done." Like, I mean, that's where you get to. Right? It's draining. It consumes your space. It's stressful.
You can't wait to get to the weekend.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you're just doing these ones. Thinking about how you can control more. Yeah. Like that's what happens. So, but to answer your question, is from direct experience. Going, well, you know what? I'm done with this. You got to hit your head against the wall until it starts to hurt. We hit our head against the wall over and over again. And then it starts to hurt him, and you're like, I'm done. It's important for people to experience it.
I remember that, like, in a relationship early on in this journey, like, it was like one of my last long-term relationships. And I started doing this work where I was like feeling what it felt like just to like be with myself and not need to be in control. Like, and I don't know how to, probably the best way to describe that is when I would do with the WTF and you had that oneness guided process.
Yeah.
And it would take you into space and you felt like there's nothing but everything and I wasn't doing anything. I'm like, wow, this feels peaceful. I feel at home. And I started reconnecting with that feeling throughout my day. And then I would notice in my life where there were things that didn't feel like that. And I wasn't even aware, like, I remember in a relationship where there was, and the only reason I picked this up is because I had a familiarity with that feeling of like nothing but everything. But I was in a relationship where there was, my partner needed me, right? And I thought that was me being loving. You know what I mean? So like
by being needed. Yeah,
by being needed. So I'd always show up to help her and be supportive boyfriend. But then I started to feel exactly what you said. Like, I'm tired though, if I'm honest. Like, I love her, but I'm feeling drained, you know? And it's sucking the energy out of me, but what's going on? I'm trying to be loving. And then I just realized that's not loving. Like, because I realized that when she needed me, and this was a huge drop in for me, I got something out of that. I felt loved. But it wasn't the real, like you spoke about before.
The real love.
It wasn't the real. And I was
it's
just like...
the need of love.
Yes. And I was like, that was huge for me because I just... I thought I had all these ideas of what it meant to be supportive and in a loving relationship, but it was conditional and it was my own stuff, so seeing that form of control, like you said, it's got to be your own direct experience, I feel like has come about because you have to really know what it is to feel that sense of like not needing to be in control as well. You got to have the direct experience of feeling that to pick it up because it's so subtle.
I have a question. Since can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So my question is, why do people? We're talking about the infinite way.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we can probably maybe save that and talk about that in the next episode. Like, what is the infinite way? Like, we can maybe break a piece of that every episode.
Like it would never end.
It's infinitely, right? So, but why do people? Why do this work? Why do the work of the infinite way, or the work? I mean, what is the infinite way? Or what is the work? It's self-actualization. It's self-realization. Everything that I've shared with you, everything I've shared with you guys, every teaching that I've been with thousands of people from around the world, all my programs, everything is about self-realization. Well, why self-realize? Why self-realize? I mean, isn't it more important just to go and attain and accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in this world?
Isn't that a trick question?
Do you know, like, why self-realize? Because it's such a, I don't talk about things that are sexy. Yeah, my talks aren't sexy. I'm more sexy than my talks. I'm just kidding. But that's how
I didn't really say anything then, did you?
But that's how unsexy what I talk about is, because I speak about self-realization. It's like, Amir, just show me how I can make money and become powerful and become sexier and become rich quickly.
But I think you have to go through that whole journey of thinking you're here to attain something to realize that's not what you're here for.
Well, that's why it's an interesting conversation, because sometimes people even come and they get drawn into my sphere, into my space, into this work, without even knowing that it's not about improving or changing your reality, right? It's actually about improving and changing your relationship you're having with your reality.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And like, if you realized who you are, and that's what self-realization is. If you realize who you are, your relationship with yourself changes. Therefore, your relationship with who you are in your reality, whether that's your relationship with money, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your work, your relationship with your health. Everything is a relationship, which is a connection. People don't understand that, How can you explain that to people to go, hey, if you realize who you are, your entire reality will change. But people come to me and they go, Amir, how can I change my reality? I'm like, you realize who you are. Yeah, that's not sexy enough. I don't want to.
That's not about attaining, becoming successful, becoming like.
Just tell me how to change my reality. Don't tell me how to know who I am. I know who I am. I look into the mirror. Oh, really? You think that's who you are? You look into the mirror and what you see through your two eyes, that's who you think you are. Oh, well, you have a long journey. But sorry, Mon, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I guess when you say that to someone, it's not tangible. So that's why a lot of people won't like that answer.
I know that's the truth. I know that's the truth. I've been doing this for a long time. And, for a period of time, Jamie, I went through going, am I just at what I do?
I remember.
Like,
you said...
No, I don't even think I've even told you this.
No, I remember.
Like, I think what I share is amazing, but maybe people don't.
It's not mainstream. It's not about...
It's not mainstream.
It's not about continuing to fix, change, and improve your life. And that's what we think we're here for when you're looking at your world.
And just in case someone's going, well, what's wrong with fixing, improving, or changing your life? What's wrong with improving?
I don't want to even say that.
Because it's only up to you to come to the realization to realize that all you're doing is fixing, improving, or changing the form. So if you have a problem, you change the form. If you're insecure around your finances, once you become secure in your finances, that insecurity moves into your relationships. That then moves into your health.
Yeah.
Like, it moves into different areas. You cannot the only way you can transcend that is by transcending the person that you think you are. You're realizing that this is a costume, this body that you see. Am I getting too deep?
No.
It's not the real. The feeling that moves this body is the real. So, you know, unfortunately, that's not sexy, or fortunately, I don't know. I still get to work with amazing people.
You know when it becomes sexy?
What? When I take my shirt off as I deliver this, or get you to take your
run away.
Get you to take your shirt off,
But it becomes sexy when
Thanks, money.
It becomes sexy when you've spent chasing everything you thought was sexy. Do you understand? Like,
when you know for certain that the other way doesn't work.
Yeah, you like, and that's, I suppose, what, I don't know what your experience was, but I know I started this work 10 years ago. I spent most of my life chasing what I thought was sexy and trying to use everything else.
So you're chasing yourself?
Yeah, pretty much.
You know that's true.
So I was chasing after myself, but it was, I never got.
Can you imagine him in the mirror, getting up in the mornings? Do you reckon he does these ones to himself? Do you reckon he does those ones to himself? I reckon he does.
Christ,
Do you?
hell no.
Do you, Jamie?
Oh,
Come over here.
are you serious?
Oh my goodness.
So, but you know, I think you have to go and chase what you think sexy, and then when you realize that's not sexy, like it's not about those things.
Maybe I used the wrong word when I used the word sexy.
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean?
It's different.
Appealing,
Okay,
like
whatever. But
you
like,
know,
you get the gist of the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you have to get to that point and do it again and again and again until you go, that's not it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was chasing sexy.
Yeah.
You know, I was a young entrepreneur and I was just, you know, it's all about finding, you know, climbing the ladder, whatever the ladder that is. Whether at first it was the corporate ladder, it was the career ladder, it was the entrepreneur ladder. And then I realized it didn't really give me what I wanted because I still felt like there's something missing, you know, $1 million, $2 million, it's still not enough. You know, it was never enough. This much turnover, this much property, this much assets, this much.
Many girlfriends.
It was never enough. It was never enough. So then I became spiritual. And then it became about climbing the spiritual ladder, becoming more conscious. More conscious than who? More conscious than other people. Right? So then I would act a certain way. I would eat a certain way, which I'm not dissing any of it. But I walked a certain way. I saw myself a certain way to become more conscious. And I realized, oh my God, I'm climbing the spiritual ladder now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. Have you done that, Monty? What's your, in that, I suppose you're here, you're doing the work, you've been doing it for like almost a decade too. I don't know, it's a long time ago.
Less, but
but why did you come along? What?
Well, as you were saying before, like I don't know that you said what makes people come on this path, but I don't think it's like there's something in people that pulls them here. I don't think it's a conscious choice you make. And I just know from being really young, I remember like books that I was reading when I was like really small in primary school even, that you would never give to a child like that. Even one of my teachers said to my mum, I don't think she should be reading a book like that. It was like a spiritual book. But even then I could see like there was an interest. There was like something in me drawing me to that.
Yeah.
And then I think and I guess I grew up in that type of a household anyway. So my parents were pretty like, I guess, spiritual more so. And so that kind of guided me that way. But how I found you was accidental in a way. It was like through Jamie, but like it was just coincidental.
It's through Jamie.
Well, we knew each other.
Right.
It was through Christine Hassler as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think you've been through a few things though. I remember, I remember, she's like getting embarrassed now. No, but I remember when you found me again, you said something of just like, I don't know, you've been going through, I didn't even know, but we'd had a conversation, I think, years earlier. And I don't know, I think you've been on a bit of the first
conversation.
Yeah, I think you said thank you for, I don't know, we had a conversation. I didn't realize years prior to that, somewhere at a friend's party or something. And I think you'd been going through some stuff, you know, which obviously got you to go search a little bit deeper. So maybe that's what happens, like we go through things that just turn us inward.
But you know what you said there, I do find that a lot. People always say to me, like, I don't know how I found this. I don't even know how I ended up on your mailing list. I mean, we don't do those pushy, spamming stuff, so I don't know how they ended up on the mailing list either. But But people just like, I don't know, but I knew that when I found this is what I was looking for. You know, you're right. It's not something you can kind of market to the world. It's something that people get drawn to, and you know, so there's no need to kind of, you know, show the appeal. Do you know what I mean? Because if someone feels this, they're just like, this is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But anyway,
It's like, how do you market it? Let go of everything you think's important.
Yeah. Well, because
To find what's really important. And people are like, what?
when I was doing your PR
yeah.
ages ago,
You were my PR, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
even then,
Do you want a job again?
like we would be looking at different ways to try and market this stuff.
Yeah.
But then I remember you always were saying it's like it's okay. The right people will find me. And I think like at that point in my life, just even my perspective on business and life, just hearing that and applying that to everything was quite huge. You know, like I'm just going to put this out there and I know that the right person is going to come, so that regardless of whatever project I'm working on, it stops me from then trying to control it and bring the people to it, rather just allow it to turn into whatever it needs to.
Which is kind of like opposite, you know, to what you're taught when it comes to marketing.
Totally.
Mate, I mean, tell me about it. Like, I used to be a promoter and promote speakers. So my background was, you know, being a promoter, marketing, and it was all about putting bums in seats, and then it's all about conversions.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that. But when I had the realizations that I have had now, my whole philosophy, my whole view changed. And it was like, you know, when I had bums on seats at a seminar, it was like, I don't feel it's about a conversion anymore. I mean, and then someone will go, but if you have no conversion, you have no business. It's like, yeah, but I don't need this business to work in order for... Now, this sounds crazy, what I'm about to say. I don't need this business to work in order for me to live the lifestyle that I love to live. Now, that's the crazy shit.
Also,
Like, someone hears that for the first time, they're like, what the are you talking about? Well, obviously, you have another business working. But
Someone
the
can't
infinite...
comprehend that.
The infinite way is...
But when all you know is about making it happen, Amir, and most people listening to this the first time, most of them probably all they know is that you got to go work to get paid to pay for your lifestyle and the things. They're like, what are you talking about? Of course, that's how it works.
I get it.
Do you know what I mean?
I get it. But the infinite way is about making decisions despite your circumstances. So, but if the decision's real, right? If it's real, it's the infinite decision. If you make a decision, if you decide to follow the decision that's already made, because the decision that's real is a decision that's already made. Think about the person that you fell in love with one day. Did you decide to fall in love with them, or was a decision already made? You realized that you loved them. You didn't go, oh, I'm going to love you. When my son or my daughter was born, I didn't go, oh, I will love you if I can see that you tick these boxes. Yeah. No, the moment they come, the moment you hold them, I mean, that was my experience. Yeah. I fell in love with them. I didn't have a choice. That's when it's a real decision. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that when you follow the decision that's real, right, that is what's manifesting, and all you're doing is participating in the manifestation of that. But my friends, when you follow that decision, it's done. That's when you experience that, hey, it's done. You know, you go.
But Amir, all I know is I work and then the money comes and that's how I pay for my lifestyle. What do you mean it's just been coming? It's just going to come. I don't have to go to work. These are the things that I always
and I think that's like part of this journey. I think like hearing that, like I totally get it because I've gone through it and then I've like stuffed it up, or like hit my head against the wall a gazillion times.
It comes down to who is trying to apply that, right? Is it your soul or is it the ego? Because when you feel the feeling, it's the soul, right? But then when the ego witnesses what you feel, ego goes, okay, let's go. Let's make this shit happen, right? So it's the same when the child comes into the world. The miracle of that child being conceived, the miracle, like everything, it grew in the mother's womb. Like everything was taken care of, right? So, once the child comes into this world, the parent goes, all right, I got this from here.
I'm in control.
I'm in control.
Okay.
Like, well, are you?
So you know what would be fun to talk about, I think, next week, because we're getting to the time now. But I think what's going to be fun to talk about is applying that and where you've done that in your life. Because I know so many stories. Moni, I'm sure you got stories. I got stories of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Right? I know far out big things you've done that seem crazy at the time.
Despite the story.
Despite
what the
seemed
crazy.
crazy.
Despite how much money's in the account.
Seemed
Despite
impossible. Didn't look possible. And I'm sure you've had experiences like that now, Moni. Like I definitely can relate. And that's what is required to really know what you just said before is true. Right? And that's where most people can't live this because they're more attached to the reality they know. Right? So I feel like if we share more stories and you'll hear things, you go, really? You know what I mean? That's that's how I learned from you over 10 years. I don't know what you were like, Moni. I used to watch him do what I thought was impossible or crazy according to circumstance and see how and I'd feel inspired.
I could see him watching me when he was first newer to the path, waiting for me to fall and go, well, what? You just stopped speaking? Like, there's a part of him just watching, waiting for it to fall. And then when he realized, oh, shit, I didn't fall. Oh, shit, he's actually rised. Oh, and that's when he started to go, oh, shit. I think this is real, what he's been talking about.
I'm just full of shit. My limitations, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, anyway, so we're going to talk about that.
Let's go have some lunch.
Yes, I'm hungry. Cool. See you, everybody.
Adios.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. See you guys.